Right, we now come to the urgent question. Chris Philp.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. To ask the Home Secretary to make a statement on asylum hotels and illegal immigrants crossing the Channel.
Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. As the Right Honourable Member is aware, the Home Office discharges its statutory duties to provide accommodation and support destitute asylum seekers through the 7 accommodation and support services contracts. These contracts were entered into by the previous government, commencing in 2019, and are split between 3 providers: Clearspring Ready Homes Limited, Serco Limited and Mears Limited. Significant elements of one of Clearspring's Ready Homes subcontractors' behaviour and performance fell short of what we'd expect from a government supplier. That is why the Home Office has informed Clearspring's Ready Homes that it must exit arrangement with Stay Belvedere Hotels, subcontractor, from its supply chain. We will not hesitate to take further action in respect of Clearsprings and its wider supply chain if this proves necessary. We are conducting a full audit of our supply chain. We expect the highest standards from those contracted to provide essential services, and this government will always hold them to account for delivery, performance and value for money. Where there are concerns about how contractors or their subcontractors are discharging their contractual obligations, we will not hesitate to take swift and decisive action. The Home Office progresses matters relating to these contracts with its providers in commercial confidentiality, and I won't give a running commentary, but I want to assure the House that whatever the position with any of its providers, the Home Office remains focused on maintaining continuity of service and ensuring that our statutory obligation is met at all times, and has contingency plans in this regard. None of this takes away from our commitment to reduce and cut the huge cost of asylum hotels, which remains our priority. In relation to channel crossings, this government has put forward a serious, credible plan to restore order to our asylum system, including tougher enforcement powers, ramping up returns to their highest level for more than half a decade, and a major crackdown on illegal working to end the false promise of jobs used by gangs to sell spaces on boats. Increased law enforcement action and disruption is already showing some indication of pressure on the business model of the gangs, and we're introducing new powers for law enforcement to use against the vile trade in people smuggling and trafficking.
Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Last summer, the government was elected on a promise to end the use of asylum hotels. Well, it's now been 9 months. Let's see how they're getting on. The use of asylum hotels has gone up, in fact, by 8,000 since the general election. It hasn't gone down, it's gone up. 38,000, mainly illegal immigrants, are now in those hotels, costing hard-working taxpayers around £2 billion a year. Mr Speaker, it is completely unacceptable that taxpayers are asked to foot a bill this size. The people living in those hotels broke our laws by coming here from France. France is a manifestly safe country. Nobody needs to leave France. So I have a very simple question for the Minister. When will they end the use of asylum hotels? Now, Mr Speaker, the government also promised last summer in the election and subsequently to smash the gangs. Well, that promise now lies in tatters. In the 9 months since the election, 29,162 people, nearly 30,000 people, have illegally crossed the English Channel. That is a 31% increase on the same period 12 months before. And in fact, this year, 2025, is even worse. Since 1st of January, more people have crossed the English Channel illegally than any year in history. This is the worst year. It is 38% worse than the previous worst year. So things are getting worse, not better. They haven't smashed the gangs, they have capitulated to them. Now, she mentions returns. Most of these returns do not relate to people who arrive by small boat. In fact, those people being returned who did come by small boat amount to only about 4% of small boat arrivals. So quite how letting 96% of people who arrive stay here is any deterrent, I really don't know. Now, Mr Speaker, finally, We saw press briefings at the weekend made to the press, not to Parliament, that the government is now considering some kind of offshore removal scheme. Sounds vaguely familiar. It seems at last they have realised some kind of removals deterrent is needed. So finally, will the Minister now apologise for cancelling the Rwanda deterrent before it even started, and as a consequence of that, losing control of our borders?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, I'm not going to take any lessons from a minister who, in his last 3 months as Immigration Minister, saw nearly 10,000 people cross the Channel in small boats and is complaining at half of that level that's happened in the last 3 months. I won't either take any lessons from a minister who was in a government that presided over 56,000 people being in hotels, in over 400 hotels at the height of it. We are getting a grip. We are getting a grip of this problem by. We are getting a grip of this problem by starting up asylum processing once more. We inherited a huge backlog because there was a 70% fall in asylum processing in the run-up to the general election. They left us with a huge backlog, with over 100,000 people stuck without being processed in the asylum system. We're getting a grip of that, but by definition, because of the backlog and the chaos that they left us, this is taking time.
Chris Murray.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Did you say Murray? Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the Minister share my astonishment at the Shadow Home Secretary's argument, given that they wasted tens of millions of pounds on accommodation that couldn't be used and billions on hotels? It's unbelievable the state of the asylum system that was inherited. Will the Minister commit to reforming that seriously dysfunctional system, including scrutinising the asylum contracts with the providers when they come up for their break clause next year?
Minister.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, Mr. Speaker, we did inherit a system in chaos, and we inherited a series of asylum contracts that were 10 years long, worth billions of pounds, with a break clause coming up in 2026. So we are looking seriously at what we can do to get better value for public money in these contracts that we inherited. But I have to say that the action on Stay Belvedere Hotels Limited is one example of the work that we are doing to drive better value in the contracts that we've inherited. We won't tolerate the behaviour of subcontractors or contractors who don't provide good value for money, and that is why we have insisted that Clearspring Ready Homes remove Stay Belvedere Hotels Limited from their supply chain.
Liberal Democrat spokesperson Lisa Smart.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. It's a pleasure to be back in the chamber to hear the Shadow Home Secretary's greatest hits of Conservative failures from the last Parliament, whether that be cuts to neighbourhood policing or the woeful handling of the asylum system under the previous government, in which he was a Home Office Minister. Of course, the Home Office should ensure all asylum accommodation providers deliver value for money, safety and security. But tinkering with contracts won't change the fact that asylum hotels are a lose-lose that eat up taxpayer money and leave local councils and communities to sort out the mess. Picking dates at random, the share of asylum applications that received an initial decision within 6 months fell from 83% in the second quarter of 2015 to just 6% towards the end of the last government's time in office. So when does the Minister think the processing of applications will speed up so that the backlog will come down, so communities like mine will get the use of their hotels back and those granted refugee status can integrate and contribute to our economy?
Speaker, I certainly agree with the Honourable Lady that the Shadow Home Secretary sounds like a broken record, and we're well used to him running that argument in this place. I agree with her also that the key to dealing with hotels is to get the system back up and running from the chaos that it was in. I can tell her that asylum processing at first decision has ramped up considerably and we are getting through the backlog that we inherited. But there's also, by definition, a huge backlog in the appeal system, partly caused by the legacy appeal, the dash to end the legacy system ahead of the Fantasy Rwanda scheme beginning, which has led to a big backlog in appeals, and we are looking to see what we can do about that now, because it's important that we get a fast and fair system from end to end, and that includes appeals.
Paul Foster.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Because the previous government lost complete control of our borders, the Leyland Hotel in my constituency of South Ribble was closed down 3 years ago. Yes, 3 years ago, and used for asylum seekers. There's a chronic undersupply of hotels in South Ribble, in Chorley, in Preston, in central Lancashire. Can ministers please provide an indication at all as to when it will cease to be used as an asylum hotel? I'm asked this question every single week. Thank you.
Mr Speaker, I want to get out of hotels as quickly as is feasible. I'm not going to name particular dates, because that is a pointless thing to do. The thing is that we've got to get through the appeals system and the first asylum processing system, so that we can move people through the system much more quickly. We also need to continue our work on returns. We've ramped those up so that there's been a huge increase in people returned, the highest figures for the last 5 years, and we can intend to continue with that process.
Chair of the Select Committee, Karen Bradley.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. The media are reporting that the earliest that the contract can actually be broken is September next year. Could the Minister confirm whether that is the case, and what liability does the taxpayer have for a contract ending today that we can't get out of till September next year?
Mr Speaker, the Right Honourable Lady is talking about the prime contractor, which in this case is Clearspring Ready Homes. As with the other two contractors, the break clauses are with them. We have approval or not of subprime contractors. Stay Belvedere Hotels Limited are a subprime contractor, and we've withdrawn, as the Home Office, we have withdrawn our approval for them to be in the supply chain.
Stella Creasy.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The Shadow Home Secretary has a nerve coming to this House and making this argument when those of us in communities who saw the damage for the contract that he managed done to the public purse. Shall we revisit some of those greatest hits? His contract put councils and Clearsprings against each other, pushing up prices, making it impossible for local communities to help those housed there. He caused absolute chaos. I have in my hands one of the letters that his government was presenting to people who were refugees, giving them less than 5 days' notice of where they were being moved, meaning that school places had to be hastily reorganised, children had to be hastily reclothed because of the decisions he was making on public funds. There was absolutely no savings to be made in the way in which he managed the contract. So will my right honourable friend make a commitment and a pledge to all of us who've had to deal with Clearsprings and their chaotic management, that when she has the opportunity to renegotiate the contract or possibly even break it for good, she will put public value for money first and not repeat the chaos of the Shadow Home Secretary?
Thank you, Mr Speaker. We are doing all we can with the existing contracts to drive value for money, and we are also looking to pilot some other potential alternatives to supply.
Friend of the House, Sir Edward Leigh.
Under the Refugee Convention, you can automatically deport illegal migrants who come here, but under the Convention of Human Rights, you can't. Now, I had an amendment moved on my behalf in the committee on this subject, a probing amendment, and I'm going to hope, with your permission, Mr Speaker, to move it again in report stage. I know the Minister can't answer absolutely now, but will she look at this amendment in a constructive spirit? Surely we can all agree that we don't want criminals entering this country illegally.
I certainly agree with the Father of the House on that subject, and we had a small but perfectly formed debate, albeit in his absence, on his new clause. I look forward to debating that with him when we get to report stage of the Border Security Bill.
I think I've still got the largest number of asylum seekers in hotels in the country, over 2,000, and have had experience of Clearsprings and Stay Belvedere. It would be really helpful if in the new contractual arrangements. There's full consultation with some of those organisations that are working at the front line of supporting asylum seekers, so some of the lessons can be learnt about past performance to improve future performance.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'm more than happy to meet with the honourable gentleman to talk about his experience on the ground with respect both to Stay Belvedere Hotels Limited and Clear Springs Ready House.
Farron.
Speaker, I hope I'm not the only person here who is utterly depressed by the complete lack of compassion shown by the Shadow Home Secretary, recognising that the people we're talking about are people with stories of their own and have experienced horrors we can barely even imagine. So isn't it right we look at this in a more thoughtful way? Wouldn't it be a wise thing to reduce cost per taxpayer and to help those who will be successful asylum seekers to integrate, to allow people who are asylum seekers to work after being here for 3 months?
Mr. Speaker, those asylum seekers who haven't had their claims processed within a year are allowed, through no fault of their own, are allowed access to work. I'm unconvinced that allowing access to work earlier would do anything but create more of a demand for people to come here.
Mike Tapp.
It's widely accepted across the whole country and in my constituency of Dover and Deal that the Conservatives left us with open borders, 150,000 crossing on their watch, and the opening of 400 asylum hotels, costing our taxpayers £9 million per day. This government has already established the Border Security Command. We've deported 19,000, that's record numbers, up 24% from what the opposition could achieve, and we're bringing in counter-terror powers to take on the smuggling gangs. Does the Minister agree that the opposition should get behind our bill so those counter-terror powers can empower the National Crime Agency to take out the smuggling gangs?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My honourable friend is correct that the border security bill before the House before the House and through its committee stage, awaiting its report stage, will create counter-terror style powers which will help us to prevent some of these crossings, to disrupt the sophisticated criminal smuggling gangs that were allowed to take hold across the Channel unabated by the party opposite, so that we can tackle this problem at source by working cross borders with other colleagues in other countries and tackling the people smuggling routes as well as the gangs.
James Cleverley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The party opposite, when in opposition, talked tough about what they would do when they entered government, but as my right honourable friend, the Shadow Home Secretary, has said, small boat arrivals are up, hotel use is up, and asylum seekers are being waved through the system just to make her numbers look good. This all reeks of arrogance and complacency, and we are now seeing the real-world impact. For example, Wethersfield, in my constituency, seeing the number of asylum seeker users going up because whilst they talked tough before the election, they took things off the statute books before they replaced them with anything else. So when will she actually come to the House with serious proposals to reduce the number of small boat arrivals that have gone up by over 30% on her government's watch?
Mr. Speaker, the right honourable gentleman says that Wethersfield is now getting more people, but there are still Wethersfield still isn't holding the numbers that his government planned for it to hold when it was open. So that's rather an odd argument for him to use, and I would have thought that he would actually want to support the counter-terrorism style powers in the border security bill if he was serious about reducing the problems at our borders, but it seems that he isn't.
James.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Under this government, illegal workplace raids and arrests are up by a third, and whilst this is welcome, we all know from our high streets and constituencies there is still a way to go. So can the Minister confirm that we'll continue at pace on this trajectory to send a clear message that the UK won't tolerate people abusing the asylum system or, in fact, illegal activity in any form?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, of course we've got to crack down on abuse of our asylum system, but also on the exploitation of vulnerable and desperate people by vicious criminal gangs.
Pete Wishart.
Speaker, during the Asylum Committee proceedings, I said to the Minister that it's only going to be a matter of time before they concoct some sort of Rwanda-style deportation scheme. Even I didn't think it would come so quickly if weekend press reports are to be believed. Can she say these reports are totally not true? And will she now rule out ever implementing a third-party country deportation scheme like the Conservatives did?
Mr. Speaker, I'm not going to comment on leaks.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I welcome the decision to close Napier Barracks in my constituency of Folkestone and Hythe, where there have been long-standing concerns about conditions, among other issues. What assurances can the Minister give to my constituents, and also those being held there, that this site will be operated properly until it closes in September?
Well, if my honourable friend wants to talk to me about any of the details, I'd be happy to listen. But clearly, of course, we want to operate the site properly and appropriately until we hand it back to the MOD in September.
Mr. Macbeth.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Given the government doesn't believe in sending illegal immigrants to third countries like Rwanda, can the Minister explain how the government plans to deport people who've destroyed their documents as they've come to this country so that we don't actually know their country of origin? Or is the solution to keep those people here forever in hotels or in one of the 1.5 million homes Labour plans to build?
Mr. Speaker, I don't know why I'm calling you deputy today. I don't know whether I've gone back a very long time to when you actually were, but that is so long ago I can scarcely remember it. My apologies, Mr. Speaker. I think that the Right Honourable Lady should remember that the Rwanda scheme was about deporting people for good and not dealing with their asylum claims. That is not in any way what this government would ever consider doing, which is why it was cancelled.
Sure, White.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Shadow Home Secretary can complain all he wants, but whilst he was in the Home Office, 75,000 people crossed the Channel, with thousands housed in hundreds of hotels across the country. A failed Rwanda scheme and a complete freeze on asylum decision-making is the reason costs rose to £9 million a day on hotels. Everything stopped just to send 4 volunteers to Rwanda, and he is responsible for the chaos. Does my honourable friend, agree that the only party in this House that voted for the Border Security and Asylum Bill will be the one that sorts this chaos out?
Yes, I agree with my honourable friend.
Vicky Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We all want to stop the perilous channel crossings that are costing vulnerable people their lives. So what steps is the government now taking to boost further cooperation with Europol so we can smash the gangs who are profiting on the backs of misfortune?
Mr. Speaker, we've put more resource into Europol to cooperate with European partners cross borders. We're operationally working across Europe. We have a new agreement with the German government. We have an agreement on sanctions and illicit finance with the Italian government. We've had the Calais group meet in London. We are doing a lot of work with source countries, areas such as Vietnam, not only on returns but on countering some of the adverts which tell lies about the kind of life that awaits those who get on perilous small boats. So across the piece, both diplomatically and operationally, we're working with our international colleagues to try to put pressure on the international criminal gangs and start beginning to close down this evil trade.
Joe Powell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Under the party opposite, the budget on asylum ballooned to over £4 billion, taking 28% of our overseas development assistance for in-country refugee costs, mainly on hotels, against an OECD average of 13.8%, making us a big outlier internationally. So I welcome the commitments on speeding up processing and reducing hotel use. But with the aid budget reducing to 0.3% from 2027, can the Minister reassure me that an ever-increasing chunk of a smaller aid budget will not be spent in-country instead of supporting vital poverty alleviation work internationally?
Mr. Speaker, clearly it's important that overseas development monies are used to try to prevent the kinds of flows of people that we've seen with the collapse in various countries, and we will be doing all we can in the Home Office to minimise the spend that we currently take from the overseas development aid budget.
Sir Roger.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You will know that most of the illegal cross-channel migrants come to this country, come through my constituency in Manston at the processing centre. So I've taken a particular interest in this subject. What I have to say is certainly not going to be popular, either on this side of the House or on that side of the House, but neither is it going to be populist. The Home Secretary and I, not together, both visited the Calais area recently. We saw there hundreds, if not thousands, of very determined, very desperate people who are going to risk their lives to cross the Channel. The Conservatives' Rwanda scheme, I believe, and this government's much vaunted smash the gangs, will not solve that problem. There is no quick fix. The only solution will be long-term and international. In that context, does the Right Honourable Lady believe that cutting overseas aid is going to do anything other than worsen the problem?
Mr. Speaker, I suggest that the honourable gentleman raises that issue with the Chancellor.
Amanda Martin. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. It beggars belief that the party opposite have the gall to question the actions we have taken as a government in clearing up the mess that they left behind, because they simply stopped doing anything other than wasting £9 million of taxpayers' money. We've returned 19,000 people with no right to be here, with increased border force, and we've increased working with our European allies and our intelligence services. But, Madam Deputy Speaker, there is more to do. It was a mess. And people in our country feel let down and a deep mistrust of politicians. And this is causing division and rumour mills to develop and fester in our communities. Can the Minister tell me what we are doing as a government to rebuild public trust and community cohesion? And does she agree that this should start right here in this House?
Well, Madam Deputy Speaker, I do believe that people need to think about the language they use and the impressions of human beings that they give when they talk about this very emotive issue, which raises a huge concern, I know, and certainly as a government we've got to do all we can to try to reassure people that we can get this system back under control after finding a chaotic mess when we came into government.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I recently wrote to the Minister to request the estimated savings the government expects from the closure of 10 asylum seeker hotels. In response, I was informed that whilst the Home Office publishes data on the number of people housed in hotels, it does not report on the number of rooms occupied. A hotel accommodating people in shared rooms incurs significantly different costs to one in which individuals occupy a separate room. Yet this critical distinction is overlooked. Given that effective policy decisions must be based on clear evidence, will the Minister commit to publishing room occupancy data to ensure accountability and informed decision-making?
I will write to the honourable gentleman.
Rachel Maskell.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I can assure asylum seekers they'll be treated with kindness and compassion in my human rights city of York. However, tragically, at our hotel, a mother at full term lost her baby. So I'm asking the Minister if she will give a guarantee that pregnant women will not be moved from hotel to hotel so they can have continuity of services and a safe pregnancy.
Madam Deputy Speaker, that certainly shouldn't be happening, and if she wants to talk to me about it, I'll try to see what happened in that instance.
Dr. Caroline Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Madam Deputy Speaker, a directive from the Treasury reported in the Times appears to suggest that house building by the government will be able to help with the backlog of asylum seekers staying in hotels. Does the Minister believe that individuals who have arrived in the UK illegally should be given access to social housing ahead of British citizens?
Minister?
No, Madam Deputy Speaker.
Chris Webb.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Back in 2021, the party opposite, when in government, told the town of Blackpool they would only be using the Metropolitan Hotels and Asylum Hotel for 3 months. They lost control of the borders, drove an asylum system that went into chaos, and we're still paying that price now in one of the most deprived communities in the country. Does the Minister agree with me that we need to close these hotels as soon as possible and give prime real estate, especially in coastal communities like Blackpool, their hotels back to help their tourism industry thrive?
Madam Deputy Speaker, we don't believe that it's sustainable to keep hotel use indefinitely, and we are working to close hotels.
Liz Hocking.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Small boats crossings are up 30% since the general election. The number of illegal asylum seekers in the asylum hotel in my constituency of Broxbourne is also up. Illegal asylum seekers are being prioritised for GP appointments and school places, which is outrageous to me and my hard-working constituents. Can the Minister tell the House when she will meet her manifesto commitment of closing the asylum hotel in my constituency of Broxbourne?
Our aim, Madam Deputy Speaker, is to close asylum hotels and get out of what we feel is an unsustainable situation as quickly as practicable.
Alex
I'm sure the Minister agrees with me. The root cause of this crisis was the last government first politically motivated, first slowing down and freezing of processing of asylum applications. I have asylum seekers in my constituency waiting 10 or more years for a decision. Has the Minister considered, because the British public want to see a contribution by asylum seekers to the system, reduce on the public burden on taxpayers, lifting the right to ban of people waiting more than 6 months for a decision until their decision is made so they can contribute to our tax system?
Madam Deputy Speaker, asylum seekers who await longer than a year are allowed to work so long as that wait hasn't been caused by them, so wait through no fault of their own. So we have that system now. I'm not considering shortening the length of time which must elapse before that is allowed.
Questions are getting considerably longer and longer. Can we keep them on point? Jeremy Corbyn.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Like the member for Herne Bay, I've visited Calais on a number of occasions, and I've met people there who are desperate, victims of war, human rights abuse, environmental degradation and sheer poverty and desperation. They don't cross the Channel without some reason to do it. What conversations is she having with European countries, North Africa and the Middle East, about the root causes of the huge numbers of people globally who are seeking asylum at the present time? Inhumanity, deportation isn't going to work.
Oh, well, I don't apologise for deporting people who have no right to be here, who've been through the system and are discovered to be neither asylum seekers or have any right to stay in the country. But I accept the point the Right Honourable Gentleman makes about the desperate situation that people are in. They could claim asylum in the country they are in, and we need to look and work with our counterparts in the European Union and along all of the routes to see what we can do to divert those people who are seeking a better life in our country, and see if we can look after them closer to home.
Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Under this Labour government, illegal working raids and arrests are up by a third. I wonder if the Minister will agree with me that that sends a clear message that the UK will not and should not tolerate those who abuse our immigration system, and that will crack down on illegal activity in all its forms.
Yes, Madam Deputy Speaker. Illegal working arrests and visits increased by 38%. More people have been arrested, more people have been fined. We are seeking to get those who abuse illegal workers, often underpaying them and treating them like modern slaves, banned from running companies, and the fines are now £60,000 per illegal worker. There's no reason why legitimate small businesses should be undermined by illegal working and illegal practices.
John.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Is the government considering sending failed asylum seekers to overseas return hubs?
Madam Deputy Speaker, I'm not going to comment on leaks.
Tom Hayes.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. It's always a pleasure to see the Shadow Home Secretary shoot himself in the foot, particularly when he brings a sawn-off shotgun to do the job. On this issue of asylum hotels, the government really is getting a grip with it, and the Conservatives ought to be appalled. We heard in Bill Committee about how children were being targeted for organ harvesting, sexual abuse and going missing into the system. The Conservatives put bills onto the statute book, which they never implemented. So I'm pleased that this government has committed to closing asylum hotels, that they've given me the assurance that they won't be adding hotels to Bournemouth. But would my honourable friend agree with me that when the Conservatives in Bill Committee defined a deterrent, and they said it was about detaining and deporting, the Conservatives neither detained nor deport it, so we should stop calling the Rwanda gimmick a deterrent?
I agree with my honourable friend. 85,000 people came across in small boats from the time the Rwanda scheme was first announced to when it was actually ended.
Richard Ford.
Madam Deputy Speaker, last month we learned that overseas development assistance would be cut from 0.5% to 0.3% of global national income. Some of us assumed that this saving would be found from the closure of so-called asylum hotels. But now we learn that the government will be continuing to hire hotels for many years to come in spite of the break contract. The Minister says that she wants to minimise the effect on the ODA budget, but how much of the ODA budget will remain?
Well, currently, ahead of the reductions that were announced, my understanding is that 20% is currently spent on housing asylum seekers in this country. Clearly, if we can get the system running faster from start to finish, if we can get people through the system faster, we can reduce those costs.
Sean Davies.
Speaker, this government inherited a chaotic and broken system and disorder at the border. And under the last Conservative government, a manor house in my constituency was deprived from the community for an asylum hotel use. Can the Minister confirm that it is the hard yards mission of this government to close those hotels and give them back to their communities?
Yes, that is our aim, Madam Deputy Speaker.
Deputy Speaker, I appreciate the Minister's curt responses suggest she's struggling somewhat with her brief, but does the Minister for Border Security and Asylum actually know how many gangs have been smashed? If she doesn't, and I suspect she doesn't based on her previous answers to me, then why doesn't she? And if she does, can she inform the House? Unless, of course, the answer is that no gangs have yet been smashed.
Well, I thank him for his belief in my ability to get on top of my brief. The National Crime Agency have recently arrested 3 men in the UK wanted in Belgium after being convicted for being part of an Afghan OCG. They've arrested a Turkish national suspected of being one of the most significant supply of boats and engines to gangs. He was detained in Amsterdam following a joint operation involving the NCA, Belgium and Dutch police. Convictions of 2 men based in South Wales who ran a people smuggling ring involving moving thousands of migrants from Iran, Iraq, Syria and across Europe. In a major international operation involving the NCA targeting a Syrian organised crime group considered one of Europe's most significant people smuggling gangs, which saw at least 20 people arrested in a series of raids across the continent, including one in the UK. This is just what's been happening recently. There's a lot more work going on, many investigations, the fruit of which will be born and we'll talk about when it's delivered.
John Slinger.
Madam Deputy Speaker, can I commend the work that the government has undertaken with European countries and others to smash the criminal smuggler gangs, such as the French deployment of specialist units on the beaches and German raids on small boat warehouses, and indeed the efforts of my right honourable friend, the Home Secretary, in Iraq and in the Kurdistan Regional Government in Iraq. So can the Minister confirm that although we will not smash the gangs overnight, the Government remains committed to working with our international partners to secure our borders?
We are doing that work day in, day out, Madam Deputy Speaker. If the party opposite hadn't let smuggling gangs take hold across the Channel for 6 years, then we wouldn't be having the difficulties we're having now to deal with them. This takes time. There is no simple, easy solution, and chuntering about it from the opposition front benches, which, let's face it, is where they belong, is not going to make any difference.
Ola Lockhart.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. In the first 9 months, this government, we have witnessed the cruel impact of the government's decision-making on farmers, pensioners, waspy women, people who have worked all their lives, while taxpayers' money continues to fund hotel accommodation for those economic migrants arriving illegally via the Channel. My constituents in Upper Bann want to see this government put British citizens first, rather than prioritising spend on those who are arriving illegally. What can she say to them today?
It's important, in order to deal with the chaos we inherited, to create a system that's faster, fairer and much easier to get through than the one we inherited. Unless the Honourable Lady wants people to be destitute on the streets, we have to look after them while we're processing their asylum claims. So speed is important here, as well as making sure we do that fairly.
Jonathan Hinton.
Madam Deputy Speaker, and I thank the Minister and her ministerial colleagues in the Department for the work they're doing to tackle illegal immigration, especially the enforcement against the gangs who put vulnerable lives at risk. My constituents in Pendle and Clitheroe want illegal immigration stopped, and the chaotic huffing and puffing from the Conservatives is one of the reasons they were booted out on this issue at the general election. It is so important for restoring faith in politics that we deliver on this. Does the Minister believe that the existing legal framework on asylum and returns will allow us to do this?
The Prime Minister has made it clear that the answer to this is not going to be to ignore international law. Therefore, we have to ensure that we can create a system that's fast, fair, effective, and does the job much more effectively than the one that we've inherited. And we're looking to see how we can make changes to ensure that that is the case.
Shaukat Adam.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Everyone agrees we must have a sensible immigration policies, but does the Minister agree with me that terms like stop the boats, smash the gangs are just populist sloganeering, which dehumanises the most vulnerable in our society and serves to scapegoat successive government shortcomings, including the £700 million spent on the useless Rwanda scheme, billions wasted on the PPE, and the lack of investment on the NHS? That's the reason why people don't get appointments with their GPs, not people arriving on a boat. So would the Minister agree we must take a holistic approach, and one maybe is to look at opening up safe routes and efficient processing, so as soon as people arrive in this country, they can start working from day one?
I don't think, Madam Deputy Speaker, that safe routes would stop people trying to get into this country clandestinely. And it's important that we can assert control at the border so that we decide who comes into our country, not the people smuggling gangs.
Luke Meyer.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. When I speak to my constituents, they accept that the previous government overspent by billions on the asylum system, and it fell to this government to take the difficult decisions to settle the bill. But what they cannot accept is how it is fair that taxpayers continue to be expected to pay £9 million a day on asylum hotels. It was a mark of shame for the previous government. It may become one for us unless it is resolved. What steps will the Minister take to speed up processing, increase returns and end the use of hotels for good?
Madam Deputy Speaker, we've restarted asylum processing. We're looking to see what we can do to speed up the appeals backlog that we've inherited, and we will create a system that is faster, firmer and fairer, so we can get out of asylum hotels, which isn't a sustainable model for the future.
Final question, Jim Shannon.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And I thank the Minister very much for her answers to the questions which others have posed. There's a clear differential between asylum seekers, those fleeing persecution, those who are threatened, and those who are economic migrants. So can the Minister please outline how government can get control of accommodation for those who are economic migrants to reduce this horrific bill, taking into account that there are families in my constituency of Strangford and others sleeping on floors in family members' homes because the housing executive who has responsibility back home cannot cope with demand? And how will government and the Minister ensure that families and children are housed whether they are asylum seekers or British citizens? Thank you so much.
Well, my right honourable friend, the Deputy Prime Minister, I think has made some announcements recently about the capacity to increase house building in this country to deal with some of the pressure on demand. And clearly it's very important from an asylum seeker point of view that we get the system working end to end much faster so that we can get people through the system, deport those who have no right to be here and integrate those who've been accepted as asylum seekers.
That's the end of the urgent question. I'll give the front benches a few moments to swap